6, 7, 8 lines down from the top on Tesvarim base. Okay. Rabbi Yoda, Rabbi Zir, and Rabbi Ami, Tarvein b'Shem Rabbi Yechon. They both said the name Rabbi Yechon. They both had a tradition named Rabbi Yochanan. But they argued about what Rabbi Yochanan said. One said that you can, when you have a fence between two fields, you can plant right up to the fence, hard up against the fence on either side, two different types of grain or vegetables, whatever the case may be. However, when you have one of those, you have one of these miniature vegetable patches, which is 6 by 6 tefachim. You have that miniature rim around it, which is a tefach high. You can't go right up to the bottom of the ridge or the rim around it. You have to keep an additional half a tefach of distance. In other words, the rim itself is a tefach high. Besides that, you need a half a tefach distance on the ground, because the total amount of distancing which you need on the ground when it's flush is the tefach and a half. So just because it's on a short ridge, on a short ridge, doesn't help. That's true; gives you the extra tefach, gives you a tefach vertically, but then you have to add on half a tefach horizontally. Okay, you can't go right up to the base of the ridge. The other interpretation, the other individual said, named Rabbi Yochanan, Goyvel shenismaid kosher. That if you have, seems to be a different tradition altogether. If you had a border which is originally a tefach high, and then it became shorter, in other words, it got, say the dirt got washed away a little bit, so it's still okay. You could still plant seams right up against the ridge. So he seems to point out a new issue, that if you lose some height, it originally started out being a tefach higher up here, and then it got a little bit shorter, it's okay. That's one issue. The other issue, which is implicit, although not explicit, and might not necessarily be, but it seems, is that if this is the side of the ridge, so you can plant right up against here, and you don't need that extra half tefach on the ground. Okay? By the way, this is actual scale, right? We're talking about really small areas here, right? So it says, we don't know who is responsible for each statement. For that which Rabbi Yossi and Rabbi Zira both said, that you can plant right up to a fence, but not right up to a rim around the vegetable patch. Ami du Omar must be the Rabbi Ami is the one who said the other statement, which is Goyvel shenismaid, that if the ridge lost some of its height, it's still kosher. Hagodah shenismaid possible, but if a fence lost some of its height, then it's no good. Rabbi Yossi said, we learned both these things in Braisos or Mishnayos. We learned at Goyvel shenismaid kosher. It says in a brayso that if the border is the rim around the field loses some of its around the patch loses some of its height, it's kosher. From this we conclude that Hagodah shenismaid also, but if a fence loses some of its height, it's no good. What's the minimum height of a fence? 10 tefachim, right? So if it loses some of its height, it's no longer considered to be a fence. Somchin l'gader, period. Somchin l'gader l'tzninon. That which you learned that you can plant right up against the fence on either side. That where do we learn that? Because we learned in the Mishnah. Hasaymech lebar. You can put stuff adjacent to a pit or near or fleshly plowed field or legapa, which is some sort of farm implement. I'm not sure exactly. Maybe it's a structure of some sort. I'm not sure exactly what it is. I don't recall offhand. Ulederech to a pathway. Ulegader or a fence. Shugavah asar tefachim. The fence must be 10 tefachim high. That's explicit. It has to be dafka 10 tefachim high, no shorter. Ain't tzarich l'guvah. Where do we know that you're not allowed to go right up against the rim? The thing we learned. Hatelem v'amas hamayim. It's interesting proof. It's kind of indirect. Let's see how it works. If you have a furrow or a water ditch, Sheinamukim, in other words, like a canal. Sheinamukim tefach, which are tefach deep. Zorin l'socha shisha minei zironim. You can plant within it. Now here it's a typo. The Rash Siroleo says the girsa here should be shlosha minei zironim. 3 types of seeds. Echad mikan, one on one rim. Ve'echad mikan, another on the other rim. Ve'echad be'emtza, and another in the middle. If you're going to say you can go right up against the rim, Yisrael Lamaton Kamashur, so you can plant down below several rows. Now this is an unintelligible proof unless you throw in some information here, which the Reb Chaim Kanievsky throws in. We're talking about a canal, which on the bottom, or a furrow, which on the bottom of it, at the base, is 6 tefachim by 6 tefachim. That's a critical. Without that, you can't understand what in the world the Gemara means here. So he says, since we're talking about a canal where the base is 6 by 6 tefachim, this is just like any other patch. Any other patch is 6 by 6 tefachim. You plant 5 things in the middle, 5 types of grain in the middle, 5 types of vegetables in the middle, and then you plant on the border all around it 9 types, 12 types, whatever we learned previously, right? The only way that you don't have the right to plant 5 types of vegetables in the middle. Remember those pictures, those cute pictures we had of that? Are they here or somewhere else? Yeah, here. I'm missing the first page of pictures here. See, here's the case we only get one in the middle, but we had cases where you got more than one in the middle. I have them in the back here in any event. See, in all these cases, you got at least 5 in the middle, right? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, right? So in this case, you got 5 in the middle. So in this, there are cases where we had even you got 6, the possibility of 6 in the middle we spoke about, and then a whole bunch more on the ridge, on the rim, which surrounded the tefachai rim. So if you can go hard up against the rim, so then you should be able to plant on the bottom of this furrow or this irrigation canal 5 or 6 types of vegetables, and besides that, you should be able to plant your whole plant on the rim as well. So by virtue of the fact that it doesn't say that, it gives you just 3. It gives you one on either side and one on the bottom. It must be that in the patch of 6 by 6 with a rim, you can't plant more than one because you need a distancing besides the height of the rim, which is 1 tefach, of a half a tefach on the ground. And once you lose that half a tefach on each side, which leaves you really by only the capacity to make a patch of 5 by 5, and a patch of 5 by 5, not 6 by 6, patch of 5 by 5, all you can plant is 1 type of vegetable. So this brisa, which is telling us that when you have a furrow or a ditch, which is 6 by 6 tefachim on the base, you can only plant 3 types of vegetables, 1 on each rib and 1 on the bottom. It indicates to us that the height of the ridge does not preclude the necessity to have an additional half a tefach horizontal around everything which is within the patch, and therefore all you can get here is a maximum of 3, 2, and 1. Again, were it to be a case where I would take the height of the ridge into account as being sufficient interruption, so in the patch below, I know already from previously in a 6 by 6 patch where you can plant 5 types of vegetables, and here it doesn't allow me to do so. Okay, so it says again, if you're going to say that you can go right up against the border, you should be able to plant several rows down below. The group of people said in front of Shmuel Baravin, no, it's not necessarily proof from here. Maybe we talk about a case here where you planted mamish on the edge. In other words, you had a case here where you planted, if this is the irrigation canal, so you have over here stuff planted, and over here stuff planted, and over here stuff planted. And the reason why you can't, the The reason why you can't, the reason why I need the archaka here, the additional archaka, is because we have stuff growing out of the side. You see what I'm showing here? That thick black line, that's a plant. So maybe the fact that you have that thick black plant there, that's what precludes you from planting as many types as you want down below, because that juts into the airspace and diminishes the amount of available space down below. Okay? So you're planting on the angle, on the embankment, literally on the crest of the embankment. Amar Los, they said, no, boo, im kini. If that's the case, like im kain, yakaro sakelch, it's not advantageous for him to have that one stalk there. Let him uproot that one stalk, v'yisrael lamatan kamashurus, and plant several types of vegetables down below. In other words, only a fool. Our Bryce is not talking about a fool, and only a fool would allow one of these plants to jut into the airspace in order to preclude him from planting down below. Why would somebody be so foolish as to do that? Can't be. So says the Gemara, lo mutav well, it's still part of the refutation. Says the Gemara, lo mutav la kor kelech echol Israel lamato kamashus, is the best to uproot that one root and plant down that one shoot and plant down below several types of vegetables. So by virtue of the fact that we see that you can't uproot that it says you can't uproot. By virtue of the fact we see that you can't plant more than one type here down below. And it's axiomatic best, and they're not talking about idiots who plant one coming out vertically out of the side. It must be by definition that you need, besides the archaka of the height of the ridge, which is a tefach, also half a tefach down below in the pit. Okay? So far so good. Is that all clear? Next Mishnah. Haya rosh tor yerek nichnas. This is the case which we've had already many times in this Masechta, which is that if I have a field, this is the field over here, right? This chumash is the field of a patch, let's call it, of carrots. So I can have a patch of tomatoes coming in like this. Rosh Tor. Okay? Because again, everybody can see that they're separate. The only time is when they're lined up side by side, not when they're at an angle. Okay? This is mutter because it looks like the end of your field. It's obvious. Now your field is full of vegetables. You want to plant in it a row of vegetables from another type. You have a whole field full of tomatoes. Or decide in one row you want to plant, instead of tomatoes, you want to plant the chveis, eggplants. Okay? So how are you allowed to do that? Says more, yes. However, there has to be some distancing here. Rosh Rosh. He doesn't speak about distancing here. He speaks about the length of the furrow of eggplants.
Within the chumash area.
What?
Within
yes.
the chumash area?
So he says, if you want to plant, let's say the chumash is my field of tomatoes, right? If you want to plant eggplants, you got to plant, says Rabbi Shmuel, straight through. One row. It's got to go straight through. So he's talking really about the length, not about the width. Okay? Rabbi Akiva, again, actually, I tell him a foolish me, Rosh started about Rosh, from one end of the field to the other. Doesn't have to be that long. It can just be 6 tefachim wide. What's the width of the furrow according to Rabbi Shmuel? According to Rabbi Akiva, excuse me. So it says the width is b'miluo. Now, like all good things in Torah, what the word miluo means is a machlokes. We will learn like the Gra. The Gra says that miluo means a mashu. In other words, the amount of space it takes for a plant to take up, which is not necessarily that much. Depends on the type of plant. So therefore, the length of this furrow, according to Rabbi Shmuel, has to be the entire field. According to Rabbi Akiva, it only has to be 6 tefachim. The width of that furrow of a dish of eggplants has to be the width of an eggplant.
What's the gross?
Width of a plant which grows eggplants. Yes.
What's the gross furrow?
It's pretty clear from the Gemara later on. This based on the Gemara's reading of the Mishnah. We'll see. We'll come back. We'll note it in the Gemara.
It's a variable.
It's variable based on the vegetables involved. That's right. Eggplants, tomatoes, cucumbers. It all depend.
What's the score that has to be the entire length?
It makes it nicker. Adarabba, Rabbi Akiva's spar is very difficult. Akiva says only 6 tvachim. Rabbi Yehuda mer rochav kamoli rochav parsa. Rabbi Yehuda says the width of the strip of eggplant has to be a parsa wide, and more is going to say that means the width of a footstep width. It's a new shiur. Yeah. More is going to learn from a pasuk. New thing. Usually a parsa is 3 miles, 4 miles. But here parsa means a foot width. And guess how wide a foot is?
Why?
Yeah, true. I didn't say it. A tefach.
Really?
Hi, you'll ask me why, if that's the case, why didn't the Mishnah say tefach?
4 inches or something?
What?
About
3 and a quarter to a 4, right? Depending on Chaz Nishur B'chaim. No, yeah. Why didn't it say tefach? Good question. So, because they're taking the lashon of the language used by a pasuk, and we'll see in the Gemara which pasuk we're using. Okay, Tani Bar Kapar. Now, we have here a sentence from the next 10 words or so, which doesn't belong here. This is uprooted from some previous Gemara sugya and placed here. Tani Bar Kapar. This is talking about when you have the case which we had to talk about a previous Mishnah, a previous Gemara, where we had the 2 ribs and the furrow or the irrigation ditch or the well in between them. You can't plant, according to the Bar Kapara, let's say cucumbers on the rim and tomatoes on the bottom. Why? Because it looks like chavush then. Remember what chavush means? Surrounded by other types. That's no good. Surrounded by other types looks too much like kilayim. So therefore, according to Bar Kapara, if you have on the top cucumbers and the bottom has got to be cucumbers too, you can't plant tomatoes on the bottom. Okay? Again, because of the way it looks. Now this, again, as I said, is not relevant to our mission. Now we get back to our mission.
Why would he say the way it looks?
You know what? Guess what?
My neighbor, I'm sure, would know where I'm from, and he wouldn't think that.
You're asking an excellent, outstanding question. The answer to your question is at the end of the next Mishnah. I don't want to spoil it by giving it away now.
They'd say the same question.
No, they give you the answer. Yes. You'll see. Okay? You'll be shocked.
Here, you gotta tell me.
Right. No, it'll be tonight. Don't worry. We're getting there. Now it's 5-10 minutes. My Baruchav. Rabbi Shmuel said it has to be a furrow's length, a length from one end of the field to the other. What width does he require? So it's more. I'll make a logic here. Ma in Rabbi Akiva. Now those sorts of typos on this page. Ma in Rabbi Akiva chovesh b'sholosh ruchos. Rabbi Akiva holds again. What's the length of the furrow? Minimum length of the furrow? That's Rabbi Shmuel. Rabbi Akiva. 6 tvachim. Now the 6 tvachim, it's really, let's say this is the furrow. This is the furrow of eggplant in the tomato field. So it's chavush, it's surrounded on all 3 sides. Surrounded by tomatoes here, tomatoes there, tomatoes head there, right? Yet nonetheless, he permits the scenario. He permits the scenario not just with a thickness, but we said b'miluo, which means 1 row of eggplants jutting 6 tvachim into a sea of tomatoes. Ma'im Rabbi Akiva chovesh b'sholosh should be ruchos. It will say, so lets you surround on 3 sides the eggplants with tomatoes. Islay rocha miluo, the width can be a mashu. Rabbi Shmuel, who says that the furrow of eggplants has got to be longer. Shuchovesh b'shtei ruchos. He only allows it to be surrounded on 2 sides because he says that the eggplant furrow's got to go from end to end in the field, right? So certainly he shouldn't require any more than Rabbi Akiva requires. He's got a chum in the length. That chum in the length should certainly diminish the necessity of being machmir in the width. Not necessarily, right? Yeah, the Gemara is going to reject this.
Right.
But come on the scale of Havminus, it's not bad.
Because you require such a header. One.
You should require more of Acker both ways. Okay. Yeah. So says the Gemara, a low koshkein certainly should be enough to have a miluo. Says the Gemara, the truth is, the Gemara doesn't reject it. I don't know if the Gemara rejects it. I don't think it does. No, it doesn't. It doesn't. You have a good question, but the Gemara doesn't address it.
Which question about the
That he should be, since he's machmir more in one direction, let him be, should be machmir more in the other direction as well. Let's see if the Gemara develops, but the Gemara doesn't address it. Ma'amar Bishmo b'shur shel yerek b'stei tvua. It's an interesting question. Another interesting question. We're talking now about tomatoes and eggplants. What about if you want to put a strip of eggplants in a wheat field? Now, Rabbi Shmuel never told us how much he requires in that case. But we know that Rabbi Akiva had said previously in the second parak in the Eighth Halacha that in that case you require a row of a furrow of 10 amos long. If you want to have a strip of eggplants in a wheat field, it's got to be at least 10 amos long to denote its significance. Okay, so mine Rabbi Akiva. That's a good question. The Gemara picks up on this. My Rabbi Akiva do mekulacha. Rabbi Akiva's mekula says all you require 6 tvachim. Who machmir tamon? He is machmir by wheat, and he says that if you want to introduce vegetables to vegetables, the shiur is 6 tvachim. If you want to introduce vegetables to wheat, the shiur is 10 amos. Right? The strip of vegetables has got to be 10 amos long. So Rabbi Shmuel, to who machmiracha, Rabbi Shmuel's machmir requires by vegetables even more, that it go from end to end. Lo koshkin yachmir tamon. He certainly is going to be machmir there. So of course, I'm not asking you that question. What do you think? I'm an idiot? I knew that. Lord Tzurcha, I don't need that. You tell me that. To lo madam Rabbi Shmuel tamon berochav. No, my shaila is what lo tzurcha it's a little bit messed up. I think it's supposed to be read lo tzurcha de lo. I don't need you to tell me that. That's no question by me. Madam Rabbi Shmuel tamon berochav. I'm not sure if I'm punctuating this right or not, but you got the gist of it. The shaila is, what does Rabbi Shmuel hold about the width? I want to know what he holds about width over there. In other words, I know here you just told me Rabbi Shmuel width holds all you need is a miluo, the width of an eggplant. I want to know what he holds by the wheat field. What kind of width of the eggplants you need in the case of the wheat field? That's my shaila. Okay, so says the Gemara, Madam Rabbi Shmuel tamam berochav, k'ma data amarocha. Now here the gear says all messed up. So the Gemara reads it like this. Just like he said here, Lo shtori Rabbi Akiva, he Rabbi Shmuel. He says no, the Rabbi Akiva and Rabbi Shmuel. The width which you need of eggplants is mamashu. So this is Cain at Amar Tamon. So do you say there that there's no difference? There's no difference in between Rabbi Shmuel and Rabbi Akiva over there, berochav. Lo shani Rabbi Akiva, Rabbi Shmuel berochav. The thing is, it's not the same thing over there. Here, Rabbi Akiva and Rabbi Shmuel both agreed, according to Gemara's logic from before, that the width of required the eggplants is how much? A mashu. But there, the width of eggplants required in the grain field is 6 tvachim. Just like we're more machmir in the length, according to Rabbi Akiva, right, which required 10 amos instead of 6 tvachim, so we're more machmir in the width. We require, instead of a mashu, a breadth of 6 tvachim. The reason, obviously, is because grain has more of a tendency, if, simple balabadish svara, grain is tall. Right? Grains are stalks. So they're going to camouflage the vegetables. So in order to make the vegetables recognizable more, that they're distinct, you need to have a broader vegetable patch. I just made that up. But it's good, right? Just seem not to be happy with it. It's okay. I just made it up. You don't have to be happy with it. Sounds good to me too. If you want to introduce,
you can't see them, so
right.
they're hidden, so you don't need to worry.
So you need to have thicker. No. You need to have a thicker row. In other words, if you introduce eggplant into tomato, according to Rabbi Kiva, all you need is a 6 tefach strip by a mashu wide, and it's already recognizable as being distinct. However, by grain, if you want to introduce a strip of eggplant into your grain, you have to have a much thicker and longer strip of eggplant in that case. Okay, 6 tefachim wide by 10 amos by 10 amos long. To indicate that it's a distinct area, not just mixed in, which is a fundamental issue in Kilayim. Okay, Shmuel says, still thinking about it?
Nobody was ever heard by him.
That's right. Nobody was ever heard by him. Shmuel says that which our mission allowed the introduction of a row of eggplant into a field of tomatoes is only one row of eggplant. But if it's 2 rows of eggplant, it is prohibited. Rabbi Yochanan, Rabbi Shimon, Lakish, Amru. They both said, Lo shani yachas yishnayim, makes a difference, 1 or 2, they're both the same. Doesn't make a difference. Any introduction is permissible as long as it fills the parameter stated in our Mishnah. Shimon Lakish Shomer. Shimon Lakish says an interesting thing. Mutar lav kia arba shuros shel yerek. Doesn't say shel yerek here. It's arba shuros bibika. You have a large expanse of grain growing. So you're allowed to introduce there 4 rows, up to 4 rows of vegetables. Now, if you have a vegetable garden next to a wheat field or any grain field, you must normally have a distancing of 10 amos, a base rova. 10 amos and a quarter, 10 and a half amos, we said back in the first parak. So that's the normal distance. However, that's only if you have an entire field of grain and an entire field of vegetables. Where you have only rows of vegetables, up to 4 rows, it's not considered to be a vegetable garden. And there, in that case, you only need a much smaller distancing between the rows and of the grain and the rows of the vegetables. The shear of distancing you need is only 6 tvachim. Now, in general, I should make this point clear on the abstract level for a minute. When we talk about Kilayim, we're much more machmir about distancing between fields and orchards and vineyards and other fields, gardens, orchards and vineyards. We're much more lenient when it comes to talking about spacing of individual plants or strips. Am I making myself clear? Strips, we can plant a strip of eggplants in the midst of a sea of grain. But you can't plant an eggplant field next to a wheat field. Is that clear? It's a big chiddush.
Yeah, it doesn't make any sense.
It does, because the fundamental concept of Kilayim is just what people perceive. People perceive that 2 fields growing in close proximity are getting mixed up. People don't think, they don't perceive that if you have a strip within the field that's considered to be mixed up. Is that a rational perception? No. It's an irrational perception. Does it matter? No. Why? We'll see in the next Mishnah. Okay? Did you look ahead, by the way, Ray?
No, not at all.
Oh, okay, sorry.
It's a contradiction to the previous example of the height of the stalks versus the plant, which is short. If you have 2 fields, you can easily see that they're different fields. They're not mixed together. Because the wheat looks one way and the eggplant looks another way.
Right, but I think that the perception is that since they're fields next to each other, there is an intangible mingling going on. In other words, they're under the ground, like they're growing together. That's the idea. We're going to see this borne out. Is it, again? I'm saying, is this rational? No. There's no distinction in botany. There's no distinction between a field and a row. There's no distinction whatsoever. It's clearly arbitrary. That's the way it is. And we'll speak.
In the field, it shows that you mean business, that
Yeah.
you're really into this.
You're into putting the skirting in danger.
Yeah.
Okay? Says more further. This is only true if the outer two rows, meaning you have 4 rows in the middle. 4 rows. You got chveis, you got tomatoes, eggplants, cucumbers, and carrots, in that order. Tomatoes, eggplants, cucumbers, carrots. So the tomatoes and carrots both have to be 6 tefachim wide. Each of those has to be 6 tefachim wide. All right. The other ones we're not so concerned about. Those are the inner ones. The tomato and carrots, which are the outer ones, each have to be 6 tefachim wide. Which is like an aruga, the size of a patch. You don't have to plant the entire 6 tefachim of the outer tomatoes and whatever, but you have to plant at least 3 of those 6. They have to be planted. Okay. It says Rav Yuna said, time of the Rav Yehuda, what's the logic Rav Yehuda requires a parsa of separation between your vegetable strip and the rest of the vegetables, between the eggplants and tomatoes, because it's a pasuk v'shkisa b'raglecha kigan hayorak. You're going to give to irrigate with your foot, which makes the water go from place to place. Whereas you draw water with your foot. So shkisa b'raglecha kigan hayorak, like a vegetable patch. So we see that feet have to do with vegetable patches, and therefore we say that what draws the distinction between vegetable patches, the shiur of a parsa. I have a feeling that this is an asmachta ba'alma, but that's why I use the lashon of parsa, because we find here the concept of foot associated with the separation. Okay, says v'kam shiur shel parsa. What's the shiur of parsa? Tefach. Dinach we learned over here the Rabbi Yehuda. We learned here that which Rabbi said it's a shiur of a parsa, utninan tamon, and we learned over there already by a vegetable patch that internally within the vegetable patch the shiur of harchaka of distancing is a tefach as well. So why do we have to mention both? They're both according to Rabbi Yehuda. Just said our case and not the case over there. How we normally would have said mine Rabbi Yehuda do machmer hacha. That which if Rabbi Yehuda here is machmir, meaning he requires that the strip of eggplants be 6 tefach wide. Requires the strip of eggplants on both sides to be 6 tefach wide. And then he says you're going to need a tefach additional on each side. So he says, you know what? Maybe that which Rabbi Shmuel says that maybe that which Rabbi Shmuel is machmir. Here, and requires here that you have a okay. I'm in the middle of the line. Let me finish the line. Ma in Rabbi Yehuda to machmir, who is machmir requires 6 machmir requires 6 tefachim. Mekel tamon, he says you only need a tefach over there. By the vegetable patch, you also only need a tefach. In other words, the distance between different types of vegetables in the vegetable patch always got to be a tefach. One of these squares, not 1.5. If Rabbi Yehuda's machmir requires 6 tefachim width in the row, is making it says all you need is a tefach of separation. The rabbis who over here say that how wide does the eggplant have to be? Only a mashu wide, only the width of the plant of the eggplant. What kind of separation do you require? Again, according to you guys, the kavachomer doesn't work. Granted, okay? But again, the kavachomer is so you're not bothering kavachomer. Again, if Rabbi Yehuda says over there If Rabbi Yehuda, who says over here 6 tefachim of distance, of thickness of the eggplant row, all it requires between the rows of eggplant and tomatoes 1 tefach. And the same by a vegetable patch. All that chokah requires 1 tefach. So logic dictates, says the Yerushalmi, certainly Rabbanan were makel here. And all they require is a mashu width to the row of eggplant. They certainly should only require a tefach of distancing within the vegetable patch. And we know that is not true only by virtue of the fact that the machlokas is made clear over there. Says the Gemara, that's what we needed the Mishnah over there. Or we look what if we only had the Mishnah over there which talks about vegetable patches? Wouldn't have had our Mishnah over here which is talking about furrows of eggplants in fields of tomatoes. I would have said Ma in Rabbanan Dinu Machmirin Tamon. If the rabbis were Machmir over there, Inu Mekilin Achar, they're Mekel over here. In other words, the rabbis will Machmir over there and say need a tefach and a half for distancing. Here, they're Mekel and they say you only need the row to be 1 eggplant thick. Rabbi Yehuda do Mekel Tamon. Rabbi Yehuda's lenient over there and says all you require is a tefach of distance. Lo koshkein diogalogas and nakavachomer, that it will be Mekel here and say all you require is a mashu thickness of eggplant row. So if you have to tell me Rabbi Yehuda's machmir, that's why I had to tell you what Rabbi Yehuda's shita is. Over here is 6 tefachim wide, and what shita over there is that you need only 1 tefach of archaka, and Rabban's shita is that over there you need 1.5 tefachim of archaka, and that over here all you need is a strip of eggplant, which is a mashru thick. Okay? Manu Mishnah. Here it is. The most important Mishnah in Kilayim. Now I'm just making that up because I'm not sure about them. Could be the rest of the Kilayim will be far more important. Well,
what happens in Machlokas about the length of the furrow itself?
It's up in the air. We never resolved it. Just left it. Okay, Anotesh.
Up in the air or it's on the ground?
On the ground, yeah. Anotesh they shall kishuin. You planted 2 rows of gourds. Of squash. Shtei shur shall glue in 2 rows of gourds. Shtei shur shall pull a mitzvah and then 2 rows of Egyptian legumes. Mutter, that's all okay. Now the shiur of archaka between all these various different rows is only one furrow width. Shura shall kishuin, where he planted 1 row of squash. Shura shall glue in 1 row of pumpkin. Shura shall pull a mitzvah 1 row of Egyptian legume. Also, that's forbidden. Sure has to be 2. Shura shel kishuin, you plant 1 row of squash. Shura shel luin 1 row of gourd. Shura shel pu'ah mitzri, and 1 row of Egyptian legume, and then shura shel kishuin, another row of squash again. Well, there's a matir. It says okay because you have squash on either side. And in the middle, on one side you have gourds, on the other side you have Egyptian legumes. Then mitzaref becomes 2 and 2. It's a monumental chiddush. Tomorrow is going to discuss that. But as it holds that the mile of 2 and 2 is present when you have X, Y, Z, X. Normally X, X, Y, Y, Z, Z. Here, if you have X, Y, Z, then X, so the Z is mitzaref for one X and the Y with the other X. Does the algebraic example make it clear? What? Right. So it's difficult. It's difficult. It's for Rabbi Blazer's matia. This the Lord shouldn't be mutter. Doesn't stand to reason. We're going to discuss. Note Adam. Now here comes, guys. Ready? Drum roll. Note Adam kishos udlas. A person can plant a pumpkin and a gourd l'tok guma echad in 1 hole in the ground. As long as the foliage of each one leads in a different direction. Meaning, should be venota. He inclines he inclines this one's foliage on this one, shows ulukan and this one and that one. Why? Should be shekol. Ma she'asu chachomim lo gozu elo mitnei marisayin. Says the Stipler Sod. Chachomim lav dafka. Shekein ma she'asra toira kilayim. That which the Torah beit kilayim hanires lemaris ha'ayin irbuv yasura. That which the eye sees as being mixed together as aser kilayim, because kilayim is a metargum linan, we translate as eruvin.
What is it again?
Kilayim. This is even true midaraisa. Even though it says ochachomim only also because of marasayin, it really means daraisa. That the entire foundation of kilayim is a marasayin type isur. So we've been saying this all along on a hunch, right? But guess what, folks? Here it is. Explicit. So we don't care a thing, a hoot, about botany. Everything has to do with perception. Okay? In essence, and to put it graphically, it's an issue which takes place in your mind, not on the ground. Okay? Agree?
So in the case where you throw all the stuff in the hole, would that be mutter or would it be us?
As long as the foliages don't intermingle, it's permissible.
So when would it not intermingle?
Oh, you have to nurse it. You have to nurse it so the foliage of one goes in one direction, foliage of the other in the other direction. In fact,
your nursing makes it grow in a particular direction.
We don't care. What do you mean by that? The roots?
The growth of the plant.
Define the growth. The foliage?
Yeah, whatever is growing.
Your nursing makes a difference.
You can change the direction of the plant?
Sure. Okay? Big Kiddush, right? But here it is. It says the one. Anoter shtei shuras uchulei. Chizki Omar b'machlokas. It's going to be a machlokas with the next Mishnah. Here it sounds like there's no distances required at all. Well, later on we'll see if that's true. There's an opinion later on. It's 8 amos. Now I want to make something clear. 8 amos is 2 furrows. Because each furrow's, well, I shouldn't say furrow, is 2 rows of trees. Of gourd trees, of pumpkin trees. They are each 4 amos. They're not trees, whatever they are, bushes. So 4 amos and 4 amos is 8 amos. So 8 amos in the next Mishnah, when it says that you can have 8 amos in the middle. In other words, y, x, x, y. If XX equals 8 amos, that's our Mishnah. That which argues in Mishnah, that which says that in the case of y, x, x, y, you need 12 amos in the middle. Which leaves 2 additional amos on each side. Right? Because then you have 8 in the middle, 4 and 4, and then in order to make up 12, 2 and 2 on either side. So that's going to argue. Okay? Says the Gemara. No. I'm Rabbi Yochanan Divrei HaKoli. Our Mishnah everybody agrees with. You know why? Our Mishnah everybody agrees that all you need in the mirror, you have 2 rows. X, Y, Y, X. And that's okay. Because both X and Y are gourds. Why? They're because Yofet Koch Mukshe Ben HaMukshil Slahatza B'Shmayna. When it's a type of gourd and another type of gourd, so then all you need is that there be 2 furrows of 8 next to each other, and that'll be the YY in the middle, and that'll be, it's okay to surround with XX. Okay? Says more Orko B'Kama Choyvesh. What's the length which you require here in order to make it permissible? Says more, Kimod Temar Gabrai Kerem. Just like we say, in order to constitute a vineyard. Now, of course, we haven't come to the concept of vineyard yet, but later on we're going to see the concept of Kilayim is wrapped up in the concept of a vineyard. Shocking, right? So, what are the dimensions of a vineyard? You don't know this yet. We haven't learned it yet. So, the dimensions of a vineyard are there's no difference between the width and the breadth, and between each vine and grapefruit, between each vine in a vineyard, not grapeyard, between each vine in a vineyard is 4 amos, meaning the minimum shiur of a vineyard is 5 trees. 5 trees. So what's the maximum distance which you, in a configuration of 5? You have one row of 3, another row of 2. What's the maximum distance if each tree gets 4 amos? What's the maximum distance in a vineyard? The smallest size vineyard? 8, right? Because it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So between 1 and 3, you have 8 amos. Is that clear? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. There's a picture here for the visually impaired among us. There's a very small picture here of 5 asterisks. That's a vineyard. Okay? So, what? Victory Garden. The thing is, these are just representative of very large trees. So in any event, so there too we see that the width and breadth are the same, 8 amos. So too Rav Hachal Oshani he or Koif Lego, the width and breadth are the same, 8 amos. According to Chizkiah, this is good. What's good? T says they're 8, so to over here it's 8. Fine. In other words, there it's 8, and it's consistent 8 by 8. According to Rabbi Yochanan, however, who says that the same machlokas later on of 8 by 12 applies over here, whether it's 8 or 12 in the middle applies in our Mishnah. If you're going to say that it's talking about 8, that the length is 8 tvachim. So kavachomer lemuksha bein hamitzolim. Then logic dictates that also when you have a gourd patch among onions, and we should say also over there, shelo yachbosh elo. It should be. Oh, sorry. Wait. There's a typo here. According to Rashi, it should be sheyach bosh bishmona. Then in that case, in other words, just like over here, by a gourd among gourds, it's 8. So you should also say by a gourd among onions that it's 8. Now I forgot why it's a kal v'chomer. At least 8. Could be more, but at least 8. That's what it is. Because you're going to say that a gourd among gourds, the shear of the length of the inner gourds, the Y gourds, has got to be at least 8 tvachim. So certainly logic dictates if you have a gourds among vegetables, that the length of the inner gourds be also, in that case, 8 tvachim. 8 amos. I'm not making myself clear, right? Let's try that again.
No, I understand what you're saying. The question is that logical? Does that logically follow?
It doesn't follow that that's it's possible that there'll be more, but that's the minimum which is going to be required. But if you have, again, if a gourd among gourds, there's got to be 8 by 8, right? In order to make it permissible. Certainly, if you have a gourd among onions, which is 2 different types, then it's got to be at least 8 by 8 in order to create distinction. Maybe even more, but at least 8 by 8. It is a kal v'chomer. It's kal v'chomer to say the minimum. It might be even more, but at least 8 by 8. No?
What is min b'mino?
Min
requires 8. So min.
Beino mino certainly require 8. Maybe it requires more. Why can't we say it requires more? Tafasta mru below tafasta.
It's because it's not even min b'mino. Maybe 2 gourds, but it's not.
Right. you said two different types of gourd.
Right.
Yeah.
Different kinds of gourds, so it's
No.
not really meaning.
Right.
But it's somewhat like Rabbi Mimino. Yeah, it's Rabbi Yochanan. No, but that's Rabbi Yochanan said. I'm not making this up. Hey, wait a minute. Rabbi Yochanan said this. I'm not making this up. Rabbi Yochanan said, Divrei Hakol Yofekach Muksha Mina Muksha Bina Mukshils Latzu B'Shmoina. He said if you have a gourd among gourds, it's more lenient. All you need in distancing is 8 amos, not 12 amos. So I'm not making this up. So according to Rabbi Yochanan, gourds upon gourds, gourds among gourds
is
certainly lenient.
if it's same gourd.
No!
Oh, even if different.
One
gourd.
is squash and one is gourds. One is acorn squash, one is spaghetti squash.
Then it's 8 by 8.
Yeah. So
then how can you compare gourds to cucumbers?
no, I'm saying it's so it's at least as rigorous as gourds among gourds.
Why?
I keep thinking about a rose among thorns. If you have gourds among gourds, right? Rose among thorns. The Am Yisrael is likened to a Shoshan al ben Achochim. So, for some reason, gourd among gourds cross links in my mind with that concept. In any event, a gourd among gourds is min b'mino, at least to a certain extent. It nonetheless requires at least 8 by 8 in order to differentiate the patches. Halachas kama v'kama, that by a gourd among onions we're going to require 8 by 8. We might even require more, but at least 8 by 8. That's all we're saying. Tell me it doesn't make sense.
Isn't it? It doesn't make sense. I don't understand it.
You don't understand it? You don't like it?
I mean, it's like saying you're a Talmud comparing people. You can't compare people.
No, granted you can't compare, but you can say it look.
What's the operative factor
Look,
that
you
you're
can say
comparing?
if a short truck requires at least 13 feet to pass under a bridge, halachas kama that a tall truck requires at least 13 feet.
Is a vegetable a tall truck? What's the operative factor that makes the vegetable the tall truck?
The fact that
relative to the gourd?
it's a different type of vegetable. If a gourd among gourds requires 13-foot clearance,
They look the same.
right? They look the same. So certainly a gourd among
If you had
eggplant.
pasuk that gave more chashivas to a vegetable, fine.
I don't even know what something else.
I don't understand the operative factor to make the deal. I don't. There's no in my CPU to come up with such a saying.
You have to upgrade to a Pentium then. What can I tell you? That's the thing. It's not. All it's saying is that it's not apples and oranges. You only get apples and oranges. It's not. It's vegetables among vegetables. But gourds among gourds are a tighter type of vegetables among vegetables. And if the tighter, more narrow bandwidth among vegetables among vegetables requires 8 amos, certainly the broader bandwidth of vegetables among vegetables, meaning gourds among vegetables, also require 8 amos. Again, I can't make you like it.
Whatever. I don't want to delay the shoot.
Okay, says Gemara further. Where am I up to? My muksha ben mukshios. Well, this is really the Gemara expanding what I just said. My muksha ben mukshios. If it gourd among gourds, sheyav sakocho latu b'shmoina. It has a mila that it's mutter in 8. Nechbosh b'shmoina. Nonetheless, it has to be at least 8 in length. Muksha ben absolim, a gourd among onions, that at least according to one opinion in the next Mishnah. Shuchas koicholatzu b'shtei mesrei, that only works in 12, right? Lo koshkin shloyach boshel, you know, you need a distance of 12. Lo koshkin shlosh, now here it's a typo again. Lo koshkin shiach bosh b'shmona, they need at least 8 in the length. Okay? So that's all an explanation of Kal v'chomer. Says the one in Tamar, Muksha ben Abtzolim a nechbash el b'shtei mesrei. if you're going to say that a gourd among onions is not permitted only with 12, kavachomer lemuksha ben amukshios, or kavachomer for a gourd among gourds, the low shaluyachbosh el b'shtei. I forgot what this means. Just give me a second. אין תמר מוקשה בין הבצלים שלו לנך בשל 12. Gee, I don't remember what this means. A second. I'm stuck. Let me go back a couple of lines. Let's go back to Al Daitid Rabbi Yochanan. Everybody sees where Al Daitid Rabbi Yochanan starts? You see Al Daitid Rabbi Yochanan? It's about 5 lines previous to 8 lines previous. Where is it? 3 lines, 4 lines at the bottom of the page. 4. Al Daitid Rabbi Yochanan Orko B'Kam B'Choyvish. The length of this patch, how much has it got to be? How much is the length of this patch? We said the width, it's machlokas. I'm sorry, it's 8. In the next Mishnah, we have an opinion that it's 8 and an opinion that it's 12. But in this Mishnah, it's only 8. Why? Because it's a muksha ben amukshios. So says the Gemara, again, Al Daitid Rabbi Yochanan Orko B'Kam B'Choyvish Inter Mishmona. We're going to say by us it's 8. Meaning, in our case over here, that is, and therefore it'd be 8 by 8. In Temeshmara, Kavachomer lemuksha ben abtzolim. So when you have a muksha gourd among onions, there sheyachbo, according to Rashi Leo, sheyachbo b'shmona. There also it should be 8 by 8. It should be at least 8. My muksha ben amukshios. Why? Because if a gourd among gourds, she has to call if it goes 8 across, it can be 8 across. It has to be nechbashmon, has to be 8 long. Muksha ben amtzolim, a gourd among onions. It has to be specifically according to what it be next Mishnah, 12 across. Low koshket shiach b'shmon. You have to have at least 8 amos in length. In Tamar muksha ben amtzolim may nechbash el b'shtemes, right? Still stuck here. Yeah, no, but I'm not sure how he's drawing from it. So I looked at the next Mishnah already. Oh, okay. I got it. Baruch Hashem. This is one of these trick kavachomers again. Ones which you don't like. This is the same kind of kavachomer again. This is what it means. Let's look at it from the other direction. We're going to look at the bottle's half empty or half full. We can start from our Mishnah where the given is 8 and work from there. But what if we start from the next Mishnah where the given is 12 and work backwards? So then it would be like this. This is the way the Kavachon work. If there, by Muksha ben Abtzolim, you need to have at least 12 amos. Not at least. You need to have 12 amos, but not more. Certainly by us, you for sure don't need more than 12 amos. In other words, if the point of reference which we begin is our Mishnah, we say, in our Mishnah you need 8, right? So then we say in the next Mishnah you certainly need at least 8, right? Because if by X and X it's 8, certainly by X and Y it's 8, maybe more. Now we're starting from the other direction. We say if by X and Y by squash and onions, it's 12. Then by X and X, it can be no more than 12. It might be less, but it's not going to be more.
That's a given. You would think there would be more.
That's why he doesn't like the Kal V'chomer. Well, among other reasons. That's not the only reason to like it. But that's, yeah, exactly.
You would think, you would even think that
It's just telling you that that's the case. It's no, it's taka should be less, right? Logic dictates, but it's telling you at least can't be more than that. That's all we're saying.
The problem is that it's not a problem. It's editing-wise, the problem is even the other Mishnah here for no good reason.
Right. The other mission is just confusing because we really can't learn anything from it. Right. We can just say it's like those signs you have in math, the greater than and lesser than. Right. So the next Mishnah, we can be no greater than the next Mishnah, but we might be less. And the next Mishnah can be no less than our Mishnah, but it might be more. That's the way it works. Okay, very good. It says Ad Kidum B'Reitzef. This is all talking about where you have a retzef. This is talking about by the grapevines. We're talking about grapevines here. No, not yet. Sorry. It's this is we're talking about where you have tightly planted rows of gourds, berotzef, literally where they're right next to each other. What about where you make individual gourds? In other words, individual stalks. What kind of distance are we talking about there? So it says, just like we said by a vineyard, lo shani hu rotzei v'osa klochim yechidim. It makes no difference if there's 4 amos between grapevines or even up to 8 amos. It's still considered to be a vineyard. So too, lo shani rotzei, even if whether they're thick together or they're far apart, osa klochim yechidim, the shurim remain the same. Rabbi Yanai said, b'machlokas. Our Mishnah, he's going back on the Mishnah. The Mishnah said in the case of, you have X, Y, Z. Yeah. No. X, Y, Z is also. Then we said X, Y, Z, X is a machlokas. X, Y, Z, everybody said is also. X, Y, Z, X, we said it's a machlokas Rabbi Elazar Rabban. So he says, Rabbi Yanai machlokas, the same thing is true by X, Y, Z. The same machlokas applies to X, Y, Z. Not everybody holds it's also. Just like Shnei Mitzvah, meaning Mitzvahfin Lahatzil. Well, the Shnei Mitzvah Lahatzil, meaning that X is mitzvah with Y and Z is mitzvah with X. In the case of X, Y, Z, X, Y joins up with X to make a mutter, and Z joins up with the other X to make it mutter. Here, we don't say Shnei Minim Tzarf and Lasser. When you have row, 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 the only way it could be also is if you said X and Y are 2, and then you have Z next to it, and that's also, because you can only plant 2 by 2 by 2. Or Z and Y are mitzvah, and they make X also. But it says we don't say ain't Shnei Minim Mitzvah and Lasser. We don't say that 2 minim join together in order to aser. So therefore they're considered to be retain their identity as individual rows, and therefore you're allowed to plant. Going right Elazar, at least you're allowed to plant next to them, right adjacent to each other.
That sounds so illogical. It's like the whole concept of clients. The start on that.
You're right. I'm not explaining it properly. I forgot. This is the way I really should explain it. You like it better. In the case of X, Y, Z. Well, let's take the other case first. X, Y, Z, X. What would be the logic of Rabbanan to Aser it? Rabbi Elazar says mutter. What's the logic of Rabbanan to Aser?
X should rejoin with Y.
So what?
Z should rejoin with X.
So what? So what's the issue here?
It sounds like
What type of kilayim? It's not field. There are no fields here.
They're rows.
They're rows, independent rows. We said in the previous mission you can bring 4 rows of vegetables. We said Rabbi Shloker said, bring 4 rows of vegetables into a wheat field. So what's wrong here? So he says here, the disciple's son, and says that I looked it up in the Kahati. He doesn't bring this down, and he should. He says that what's the problem here? Chavush. Chavush. How's it chavush?
Y and Z are chavush by the X's on each side.
Right. And in the case of X, Y, Z, what's the chavush?
Each one is chavush.
The Y is chavush in Z and X.
By X and Z.
X and Z.
What is chavush again?
Surrounded, right? Which we said is forbidden. That's the problem. So says the Gemara. Rabbi Zera says there's no problem of Rabbi Yanai says. And now Rabbi Yanai makes much more sense. Rabbi Yanai says no problem of chavush by X, Y, Z. Give me a break. X and Z, and I'm starved to make Y a chavush. If you have X, Y, Z, X, then I can see Rabbanan ask for it, right? Why should I? No, I'm saying wrong. I'm not saying it's far wrong, but I'm saying what Rabbi Yanai says wrong. Rabbi Yanai says Rabbanan Rabbi Lezer also argue by the case of X, Y, Z. But just like the case of X, Y, Z, X, Rabbi Lezer Asim as Matir says, give me a break. There's no chavush here. The Y joins up with the X, and the Z joins up with the X on the other side. There's no chavush. So through here, Rabbi Lezer will argue and say X, Y, and Z cannot create a chavush. Because X and Z are not mitzvah to make Y chavush. The same machlokes Rabbi Lezer Rabbanan applies by X, Y, Z, X is going to apply by X, Y, Z. That's what Rabbi Yanai says. Along comes Rav and says, no, Divra Koli. It's not true. Everybody agrees that this is also X, Y, Z. Kishem Sheshnei Minim Mitzarfin La'atzil. It's like two minim joined together to save. Kach Shnei Minim Mitzarfin Leser. So two minim join up in order to make a nisur as well. Alright, it's been an hour tonight. You guys want to finish the Mishnah? It won't take very long. Just take a couple of minutes. Okay? Says Mar Mastisim Misayil Rabbi Yanai. We have one, the Mishnah, it should be actually Pliga. Broad changes to argues. The Mishnah seems to argue Rabbi Yanai. There's a very Batish Rai against Rabbi Yanai. You'll be shocked. Probably would never say such a thing. Our Mishnah's a Rai to Rabbi Yanai that they don't argue in the Reisha. A Rai against Rabbi Yanai that they don't argue in the Reisha. What's the Rai against Rabbi Yanai for a Mishnah? The Mishnah itself. Why does it need Rabbi Lezer Mati? Where does it say Rabbi Lezer argues? Only in the Seifa. Must be in the Reisha. He doesn't argue. Don't try putting it in meaning at this. This is very simple. Rabbi Yanai said that they argue even in the Reisha. Says no, they don't even argue in the they don't argue in the Reisha. In the case of X, Y, Z, which is the Reisha. What's my riot that they don't argue in the Reisha only on the Seifa? The case of X, Y, Z, X, because Rabbi Lezer Mati only appears in the Seifa, not in the Reisha. In the Bible, what would we say to that? Say Kaya Tarvayu is going on both, but the Yerushalmi says it's Raya against Rabbi Yanai. But the Yerushalmi is very even-handed here. Masisa Pliga Rav. Mishnah also argues on Rav. Because it says, Shiur shel Kishuin, Shiur shel Dluin, Shiur shel Puamitin, Shiur shel Kishuin. X, Y, Z, X. How could that be mutter? Hajlon not the service, lo parnesru. How'd you plant X, Y, Z, X? How'd you plant X, Y, Z, X? Mistama, first you planted X, then Y, then Z, then X. Hey! After that, how could you get there? When you planted X, Y, Z, according to Rav, it's also ready. So how'd you get to X, Y, Z, X? You weren't allowed to get there along the way. Right? So that's a very good kasha. Says more tipoter shenotar ba'os kachan. Rav says about a case where we planted all four rows simultaneously. X, Y, Z, X. In other words, it doesn't mean that the same day, right? You put the seeds around the same day, same idea. Okay. Notei Adam Kishos. A person's allowed to plant gourds or squash. Tani, that was the last case of Mishnah. Tani, mutu adam asos besoch sadei guma ktana muka tefach. You can make it feel a small hole, the depth of a tefach. The leaves are besoch are boards he wrote in, and he could plant it 4 seeds, and then put the foliages in four different directions: north, south, east, west. That's permissible. Says Umar Rabbi Abba Kana, and Shimon Narshaya b'Shimon and Shimon Lakish both said, "B'noitim l'chor b'ashanu." Say about where the foliage in either direction is going out over open territory, because that way it doesn't look like anything's mixing in any direction. Rabbi Boy Mana, but Rabbi Mana Boy, Rabbi Boy stated. Here, boy is a statement. Actually, it's a question. Sorry, here's a question. He asked, why don't we say this? If they're inclining into open ground, you can do 8. North, northeast, east, southeast, south, southwest, west, northwest, and back to north again. 8 directions. Because it says 45 degrees angles are enough. Right? Shtayim mikan, shtayim mikan, shtayim mikan, shtayim mikan. Have a good night.